Oh no. Oh dear, dear, dear. It's all gone live wrong. Let Oh dear. All right. We're having live difficulties, but I think we're live. Um hey, how's it going everyone? This was a bit of a mad rush putting some things together. But dear, dear, dear. Anyway, how's it going everyone? I thought I would just have a bit of a casual hangout, a bit of a recap on the Apple event that's just happened. We obviously had some fun things announced and some not so exciting things from my part. Um, yeah, I was just about to do a little intro sequence and whatever, but because I tested it just before I went live, I've realized that's another thing I need to test because I've broken one of the triggering systems. But anyway, today's live stream, so we want to recap what's just happened in the Apple event. This is an event that I have to be honest, I think I might have been more excited for than any other Apple event that's happened in the last few years. And because of that excitement, I'm potentially the most disappointed I've been following an Apple event, unfortunately. And this is all on me. It's nothing really to do with what happened, with Apple or what the event was or anything. It's more just a case of the needs that I have and the things that I'd been waiting and hoping and expecting for haven't quite delivered yet. So to give you a little bit of perspective on where it is that I'm at, I have been desperate to have a desktop machine again, to get back into the pro space of having a desktop machine. And I've realized over the last few years, things have potentially been lower in productivity and efficiency as I've gone to using a MacBook Pro as a main sort of Mac, really. And I can almost pinpoint exactly, and you can even back it up with stats, and you can look at the amount of videos produced and released and everything. From the moment I sold my iMac back in 2017 when I was living in Australia, sold that, returned to the UK, and then just kind of like change in direction and things. You could either pin it on the iMac or you could pin it on the fact that I returned to the UK. One of those two. But I definitely feel like the number of videos and things that I've produced has definitely dipped and dropped since I've no longer had a desktop. And at the time, I thought, you know what, I'm going to sell the iMac and I will buy a new iMac when they redesign it. And I was almost convinced that they were going to do that in 2018. It didn't happen. And then I thought maybe 2019, it didn't happen. And maybe even last year, and it still didn't happen. And now this year, we've got so close, and I feel like the carrot has been dangled so much. And they've redesigned the iMac, but it seems like they've gone for the consumer focus first, and a Pro or a bigger one looks like it's potentially coming later. So I will have to put my waiting game back into play on things. But anyway, so that's the backstory. Let me just check in with you. How are you doing? How's it going in the chat? There's a lot of people here who are waiting. Thanks for waiting. Thanks for hanging out. I'm just going to catch up with the chat. Once again, I've thrown myself off because I was going to do all this whilst I was, setting things up and stuff. Likewise, I was going to post a little Instagram story, which I may be able to do. You know what? Nah, I'm not going to do it. We'll do it later. But yeah, how's it going here? How's everyone doing in the chat? Were you guys happy, disappointed from the Apple event? Everything that's been released and stuff. So to recap on what has been released, there were a few. Just sorry, chat there. A chin, Jay Leno feature, absolutely. Yeah, so there was a few products released out of nowhere. There was a purple iPhone. I don't really know if Apple's ever done that before, just launching a brand new color for an iPhone like midway through its production cycle. But anyway, they've released a purple iPhone 12. It's kind of cool. It looks nice, but it felt like a bit of an odd sort of strategy and a weird sort of thing. But anyway, that's one thing they've done. What do you guys think about purple iPhone? I'm not really hugely bothered. I think the color is really nice, but it's it's not something that I'm like jumping at. But if you're looking to get a new iPhone, then could be an option. Could be an option. I'm just gonna double check. There we go. On my video setup. So they also released AirTags. One of the features that I thought was pretty cool is, if you lose your device and you can use your iPhone to quite literally point you in the direction. So AirTags, these little sort of keychain tags, they feel very similar to the Tile devices, which I use a lot on suitcases and luggage and all sorts of things like that. So they're kind of doing the same thing, but with the ecosystem, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that device feature, being able to use your phone to quite literally point you and say, "It's over here, mate. Come and check it out over here." So yeah, I thought that's a great feature. But again, these are just small products. There were some updates to the Apple TV. So using your iPhone for color calibration, they've done some greater processing, more again in the direction of HDR content, color balance things. I'm not quite sure about this comparison here that they used on color balanced versus original from your TV. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I've set up my TV so that it's pretty well set on the way that the color looks and everything like that. So I don't know. It felt like a bit of a marketing push, but at the same time, I'm all for the fact that they're pushing for getting the highest quality into most consumers' hands. The people who don't really know about the tech sort of side of things, it's giving them the ability to maximize the tech. So, great features. And of course, an improvement to the Apple TV remote, which is probably long overdue. I feel like they're embracing the fact that, people like buttons, people need buttons, and they don't want all the faff of other things. So yeah, these were the sort of introductory products that they were announcing and launching with things. But what I was waiting for, of course, was the iMac and any sort of nod on the Macs. So about 6 to 8 weeks ago or so, I bought a M1 Mac Mini with the idea of that being that it's going to be a sort of background admin Mac, the type of Mac that would do things like file processing in the background, things like when I've done long form recording in 4K, and once I finish editing it and it's all in ProRes and whatever, once I finish editing it and I need to back it up or archive it, I don't necessarily want to be archiving that ProRes footage. So I like to keep it at 4K, but change the codec to something like H.265. So it's a much smaller file size and maybe lower the bit rate. If I ever needed to get that footage, I could still get the resolution back and the picture looks great, but it's not in that ProRes format. Therefore, it's saving a huge amount of space. But that takes a lot of time. And if you've got hours and hours of footage and long form 4K footage, that takes a lot of time and it occupies your Mac. So having something like a Mac Mini is a great idea of something that I wanted to do those types of admin tasks. And I'm doing that frequently. Likewise, it's also good to just have, silly as it sounds, it's good to have a backup Mac at times. My MacBook Pro currently has been pissing me off no end for the last year or so. So at some point, I do need to take that in and get it looked at and repaired, because there's been some odd stuff going on with it. I'm not entirely sure. And I'm usually pretty clued up on the technical aspect of it. So I need to do that. But at the same time, without having a secondary Mac, that's a massive hit to the business. You know, if I can't operate for 10 days, 2 weeks or so, that's a massive pain. So it's always good in my eyes if you're in that position to have a secondary Mac, and that's where the Mac Mini really fits in. So the long-term goal is that it will be that secondary admin Mac, but at the same time, uh, it's currently been my main Mac. I'm using it right now. I love it for streaming because it is just whisper silent. You can't hear the fans, you can't hear anything. If there is anything you can hear right now, it would be the Synology in the background. It's chosen the prime moment of right now to do a time machine backup. So that's the only noise in the room, and I love that. You don't realize how important a quiet Mac is until you use one that has, a silent fan approach to things. I love it. But the idea with that is that eventually I would upgrade my MacBook Pro to something like an iMac, and that would be my main desktop machine. I'm really on board with the idea of having a video workstation at home. And when we return to traveling, I will take MacBook Pro with me, maybe even take the Mac Mini with me if we go for like 2 months or so, and return and do the massive bulk of editing off of a blisteringly fast desktop workstation. In my head, I feel like the efficiency will pay off for that. And I just feel like it's, a good setup and a good system. So I'm looking forward to that eventually. It just seems like I'm potentially going to have to wait a little bit longer, but that's fine because the Mac Mini is getting me through at the moment. So yeah, the M1 system, the whole system on a chip approach has been great. There are a few questions that need to be answered though in terms of the graphics performance. So they're doing a lot with the processor, but they haven't really addressed the fact that they don't have their own GPUs and whatever happening. So we're waiting to see with that. And throughout the keynote, they spoke quite highly of that, and it's been massively raved, and people have loved it. So when it came to revealing the iMac, we'd all been waiting for an M1, and my reaction immediately was a little bit weird. So this was kind of how they revealed it. So coming in with good like visuals and colors, and like, oh, color, hello, whoa, chin, massive chin. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the design of it. In many ways, I love the way that it looks. I think it's got a very sleek, angular, straight approach to things. But that chin, I don't know. It's interesting. It really just told me that, this is a device for consumers, and up to 4 USB-C or Thunderbolt ports. So there's not actually a guarantee of 4. And yeah, there's a few things in there that are kind of a bit odd with the whole thing. And 24 inches. So an upgrade on the 21, but there's still the 27 inch. I may have been fine with 24 inch if it was like a full, a full like blown pro machine. But I don't know. I'm just seeing there's a few people asking about the colors and stuff. I mean, what are your thoughts here? Let me throw this up. Hopefully this works. Yeah, so not a fan of the colors. Who wants a bright red or yellow Mac plus the white edge and chin? Ugh. Yeah, the colors, they're weird. I saw this rumored a lot beforehand, and I wasn't sure how I felt about the idea of returning to colors with the iMacs. I don't know officially, but I've got a feeling that the iMacs aren't sold in high numbers. Anyone that I know or ask when it comes to using a Mac, it's all MacBook Pro, MacBook Air at least. But I'm pretty sure MacBook Pro is just king of the hill on their quantity sold. So the idea of offering different colors on an iMac was really weird to me. But they've gone ahead and done it. And if we look at the previous iMac, that was a design that lasted 11 years or so. Like I had that previous design back in 2013. I think it was launched in 2012. So yeah, like 9 years of the same design. I guess it's a sign that they're gonna maintain that machinery that make the current model for another 9 years? Like, surely not. I mean, that's going to be, yeah, 9 years of chin. Um, so I do hope that there will be a later one at some point later in the year that will, have a slightly different design, more pro features and whatnot. Um, so yeah, how do you feel about the color? I'm a bit unsure on that. I think if I was to go for one, I'd probably go for a silver. I was surprised there wasn't like a space gray. Um, but yeah, I think the silver probably would be what I'd be looking for. Um, so yeah, the previous designs of the iMacs. So I've had a few of these. The iMac G4 was my first ever Mac. The one that was on the sort of swivelly screen. I love that one so much. Really love the design of it. It's also one of the first Apple ads that I remember back in I don't know when. Well, first Mac ads I remember. I think probably first Apple ads I remember would be the iPod ones in 2001. Um, but yeah, the iMacs, they've gone through a thinning process and now they are super super thin. If I'm honest, I don't think I'd really care for it being thinner. Once it's on your desk, it takes up the footprint and that's kind of it really. So I don't care too much that it's thinner. I like that it's thinner. Um, I wouldn't say it's necessarily something I was hoping and waiting for. But I think it's done a good job with the design. Interesting that I saw a tweet from Marquez actually. The thinness, so it's like 11 millimeters or something. But the fun fact about that is that that is actually too thin for a standard 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which is why it's now on the side. Not only is on the side being better for usability, but it physically cannot fit in the thickness of that screen, which is quite cool. Uh, Other improvements that they've got along the way, they've improved the webcam. So I don't think it would take much for them to improve the Mac webcams. This is again welcome improvements with the ISP and the processing that's happening through here, each of the steps and whatever. A lot of people will complain about a webcam only being 1080, but the reality is resolution doesn't actually matter in terms of the setup that you've got for a webcam. I mean, we're streaming right now in 1080, but with the right camera, with the right lighting, and with the right processing that's happening, you can improve the cameras, you know, without using resolution. It doesn't matter that it's only 1080. So for people who would maybe say like, oh, why isn't it a 4K one or whatever, that doesn't bother me. I'm just happier for a brighter system. And of course, to claim the best ever in an iMac is, as someone has said, not hard to beat when you come from a potato. That, it's true. But welcome improvements. So, they're good to see. The other additions that they've done some interesting stuff with the connectivity. So there's on the back, they've added a magnetic power cord. I don't know, how do you feel about that? So my first reaction when I saw it was like, ooh, kind of cool. Ooh, am I going to be able to cable tie that? I'm sure they've thought it through on the process and things. But the back of it, we've got this magnetic connection to plug in the power with a braided cable, which looks pretty nice, I might add. And then because, of course, it's so thin, all of the power and the power unit is now in this brick on the end of the cable, similar to how you have with the MacBook Pro with the Ethernet connection. Again, the Ethernet, probably the port's likely too thick for the thickness of that display now in that brick. I've seen this before on, I can't remember which brand it is, but there's some Windows laptops that were around, I want to say maybe 8 years ago or so, that had this setup, which was kind of cool, where the brick was a Wi-Fi repeater, and you would plug in Ethernet into the power brick, and then it would create Wi-Fi to your laptop because the laptop was too thin to have an Ethernet port. Or even a decent Wi-Fi chip, which I thought was kind of a cool innovation. I can't remember which brand that is. If anyone remembers which brand that was, let me know. A few people saying they not liking the let's turn that on. Not liking the power cord. I feel like you might kick it. Yeah, I feel like you'd be able to, with a desktop computer, you set things up, and once it's there, it's there. So hopefully it wouldn't be, a burden too much. I mean, we already have it with MacBook Pros, and those are portable. So I don't think it's really that big a deal. But that magnetic aspect, I bet it's cool. But the time that you kick that cable out, or you adjust the position of your camera, and you change the angle, and that cable yanks out from behind, and you lose all your unsaved work, and you quit the Zoom meeting you're on, and all those things. Um, the time that happens, you will not like the magnetic cable. So I really hope that's been thought about, and I think it will have been. But let's let's hope. Let's think positive about this. So I feel like I may be coming across negative at times on things, but I think it's more a case of the setup on everything. I was really, really hoping for some sort of beast of a Power Pro iMac, and I think I'm just going to have to wait a little bit longer. Um, so in terms of the iMac setup, they spoke a little bit on the performance of things. Again, didn't really nod too much on the graphics aspect. So there's no real talk of GPU. So I think that's something that will potentially be coming again later. In comparison, my Mac Mini, I've been able to edit my videos pretty much the same that I have on my MacBook Pro, albeit silently. I've only had a few hiccups with Premiere on exporting in, oddly, in H.264. I've been able to export in H.265 fine, which is surprising because that's the more processor intensive. But anyway, that's the only sort of issue I've had, and I've had a couple of glitches with playback on footage from my C70, which is in XF AVC, which again is odd because that's more edit friendly as a codec, but whatever, that's kind of how it is. So I'm keen to see what they're going to do with a dedicated GPU, because at the moment it's all still just the system on a chip. And although it's performing well, you just know that when they release that GPU, whatever it is that they're going to do or who they're going to pair it with, it's really going to fly through footage and things. So that's definitely something that I'm waiting to hear from, and I think we'll just have to wait a little bit longer. Some people saying, yeah, hoping for M1X at WWDC, possibly. WWDC is very much a software-based conference, but they have released hardware in the past. And of course, this is very much an M1 year. So I think Apple are looking to fly through all of their upgrades to M1. So maybe we might see it. But yeah, just keen to see what the performance improvements will be on these new ones when they eventually do it. What else was there? There was also a new keyboard and mouse release. So if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been talking about wanting to get a new keyboard and mouse. I'd love the Apple keyboard, by the way. The Magic Mouse, I use it, I enjoy it. I hate the way it charges. Looks like that hasn't changed. But I do enjoy the Magic Mouse for the scrolling, just capabilities left, right, diagonally. I think it actually works brilliantly. And the gestures on top, I'm a big fan of that. And the keyboard as well. The only thing that I've struggled with the keyboard is, since having a second Mac, is being able to switch between devices. There was I didn't catch any mention. I don't know if anyone else caught any mention, but there was no mention of switching this keyboard between different Macs. If that is a thing, that would be brilliant. Likewise, if you could switch, if you could pair it to, say, another Mac and an iPad, that would be great. I'd really enjoy that. But I don't think it does that. However, not Face ID, Touch ID. Face ID would be nice. Touch ID on the keyboard is something that I've been expecting for a while, and I'm glad to see that that's finally arrived. I'm wondering if they ever had some sort of difficulty with it being in a wireless setup, maybe a security thing. I'm not entirely sure. But having Touch ID on the keyboard is great for Apple Pay and other things. Again, that's something I've noticed since I switched to the Mac Mini, because it doesn't have a keyboard attached to it. Whenever it's come for passwords and things like that, I realize, oh, I don't have Touch ID anymore. Most of the time it does pair with the Apple Watch, so it works really well. But if it doesn't, and you have to type in your password, and you realize, what a blessing it is to not have to type your password in when you've got that Touch ID available. So yeah, first world problems, but I'm glad it's on the keyboard, and in different colors again, of course, to match the iMacs. Um, so that I think is everything that I wanted to share with the iMac. Uh, as I've mentioned, it seems like it was very much focused on the consumer. They were talking a lot on how it would be used, for people in the home, for students, and sort of light work. And that was definitely the approach that they took to things. So yeah, I guess the main thing with the iMac is we will just continue to wait. It's an odd one. I still feel so weird about it. I mean, this is a weird setup. Have an iMac in your kitchen, I think. Um, but anyway, yeah. So that's the iMac. However, there was of course another product released, which was quite interesting, and that was the new iPad Pro. So for me, the iPad Pro, I've got the 2018 iPad Pro, and the iPad Pro, I think by far is Apple's best product right now. I genuinely think the iPad is phenomenal. I love mine to bits. I use it every day for a variety of things. And I think one of the reasons why I love it so much, because there are also people who struggle with it because it can't do certain things. But one of the reasons that I love it so much is because I'm not looking to replace a Mac with it. I use my iPad for iPad things, and it works perfectly for those iPad things. I'm not trying to, you know, edit a load of things on it. I'm not trying to do massive amounts of file management things and whatever. I love using the iPad for iPad things, and it does it beautifully. The 2018 model that I've got is still phenomenally capable. It's incredibly capable. Um oh no, what's happened? It's my stream been blocked. What? That's interesting. I don't know if you can still hear me. It says stream unavailable. Is this still working? I'm gonna say uh-oh. Oh, okay. No longer blocked. Oopsie. Naughty, naughty. I thought I would potentially get away with that on fair use policy because it's, reporting or whatever, but we just had a little disruption for minimal block. All right, I've got no more to share in terms of recordings from the keynotes, I guess. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about the iPad Pro. So yeah, the 2018 iPad, I love it to bits. It's a performance powerhouse. I think one of the major limitations to it isn't actually the hardware at all. There are some iPad OS level limitations on things, but the main limitation I think is potentially developers and their sort of, I don't want to say like ambition, but their confidence maybe in producing great apps and just really stretching the imagination of what those apps can do on the device. Um, I think that's potentially one of the limitations. So, for example, I'd love to see, or maybe it's even resources, but I'd love to see some apps that I have on my Mac available on the iPad, and some features and and other things. For example, apps that do things similar to InDesign in terms of layout and moving things around and whatever. But there feels like there's a bit of a lack in that sort of space. Things are either closer to being more of a mobile app, um, or trying to do some of those desktop things, and the hardware's capable, but the app is a little bit limiting. And I don't really understand what's holding back some developers, because I never feel like the iPad struggles in any way. And they've been updated, I think, twice now since that 2018 version, and the performance is even better. But yeah, it's some of the limitations I think that are software related. So completely lost my train of thought on the iPad Pro. I think what I'm getting at is the iPad is just phenomenally powerful, and with the new M1 Max, and now that they've put an M1 chip into the iPad, the crossover to the Mac, it feels like they're actually pairing the iPad. They've decoupled it away from iOS and from the iPhone, and they're now coupling it back and closer towards the Mac, which I think has been a dream of people since the iPad was launched in 2008. And it feels like it's just getting closer and closer. So it'll be interesting to see what gets announced in WWDC on the new iOS and the new iPad OS. So that'll be in June. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's gonna launch with that, and I guess what they're gonna talk about on things. So let me just jump over. Hopefully, I got a button for this. Boom. All right. Can't get a copyright strike for this. I'm browsing the internet. So let's have a look through the Apple website on the new iPad. So I'm on the American one because I don't think the UK one is updated yet. But yeah, new M1 chip in here, which is phenomenally powerful, and it really shows their statement of intent that this is more in line with what the Mac is doing, I guess. But and 5G on some of those. But the really cool thing that I'm excited by, let me try and find a screen of this, is the XDR display on the 12.9 inch. I think quite literally, this could be the best display that is available in your hands. The quality of watching content on the iPad is already brilliant, but having it in a display that matches the XDR, I think that's going to be pretty special. I'm really dreaming of filmmaking apps that may come around that could connect with cameras and all sorts of devices so you could truly properly monitor and maximize the resolution of the iPad. I think this would be brilliant. It's such a great display, and it's so light and thin. Like, I think of, some of the displays I've got here, like there's a Lilliput A12, I've got another Lilliput here. They're pretty chunky. They're not as bright. They're definitely not as high a resolution as the iPad. And they don't have an operating system like the iPad does. The iPad is quite literally the best display that is available in that size and form factor. Plus, it's got a whole ecosystem of apps, and yeah, I think this is phenomenal. And the drive towards mini LEDs is pretty exciting. I'm not sure if I personally would be interested in a 12.9 inch. So I've currently got the 11 inch version of the iPad Pro. So going to a larger one, it's potentially a little too close in size to what a MacBook Pro is. But at the same time, it would be great to just travel with and set up. And with it now having Thunderbolt as well, maybe that works out quite well of connecting to docks and other stuff. I don't know. What do you guys think about using an iPad as a main sort of travel machine? I guess it depends if the apps come for it. That's kind of a key thing, right? Yeah, it's I'm excited for what they're going to announce WWDC with the software on here, because I think there's potentially a lot of questions to answer, and excitement on how things will run, for the iPad, and utilize this power. Like, it's got so much power. Let's really utilize it and see what can run with it. The cameras, oh yeah, that was a cool thing as well. So the front-facing camera is now an ultra wide, and it seems like it's a better version of the ultra wide than what's on the iPhones. And using the I guess the processing inside, it can show either the full ultra wide, or it can crop in and zoom. So when you're on FaceTime, for example, and just show like a nice sort of headshot. But say if you're in a wider setup and you've got the iPad down, and you go and walk around, you can have the camera just pan and change to you. I feel like these types of innovations have definitely come about from the fact that FaceTime and, video conferencing apps have grown massively in the last year, due to the pandemic. So, you know, that's definitely a positive that comes out of it because, I mean, I'm FaceTiming all the time. I'm quite often got it on, and it's definitely always on between either Ellie and myself in the flat somewhere. And being able to just have it available and interact with it like you're actually in a room, the comfort that comes from that, I think, is a great thing. So using this adaptive wide angle camera and being able to move around, I think that's pretty cool. Um, Hopefully it will get, caught on with our parents' generation, who are generally a little bit more connected into the display and not wanting to distract or do anything else. Whereas I like to use FaceTime, where it can just be on and you can just sort of, hang out and just turn and talk to the FaceTime if you need to, and then just get on with your whatever and carry on. You're just hanging out together. So I think this will really help bridge that and reduce some of the sort of fatigue of video calling. Definitely. Of course, improvements on the back and other camera updates, and the AR and LiDAR and everything. That's, pretty cool. It's not something that I've personally used a lot of, but it's just, I guess, leader of the pack at this point, in those terms. So yeah, that, I guess, is the full update on things. In many ways, it's just, subtle progression moving forward on things. But in many other ways, I'm I think I'm just a little bit disappointed on the iMac. I think that's kind of the main sort of thing that I wanted to sort of express with it, that I'm just waiting. And I'm so glad that I have this Mac Mini to really tide me over whilst I'm having issues with my MacBook Pro, and being able to use a silent machine and one that I can rely upon incredibly well. Because the Mac Mini it's such a beast. It's surprisingly such a beast. It's just lacking in some of the graphics department, but it's not claiming any of that. So the fact that it can work to what it can do is pretty impressive. So yeah, right. I'm gonna interact with some of these messages on here now. So uh, I hope you followed along and understood my sort of train of thought on things that I'm thinking about with the announcements and how I feel about the iMac and stuff. Um, yeah. So a question here. Can we expect to see some editing content on the iPad? You know what? I thought about this and teased about it a little bit. I really enjoy using Lightroom on the iPad, and I've enjoyed a lot of flights in the past where I'm editing my photos from a trip on my iPad. The difficulty I have is more, again, on the software side of thing, with Lightroom's limitation on the way that it synchronizes libraries. I generally like to manage my files personally, a bit of a control freak on the way that I store my files and how I rename them and organize them. And I'm still a little bit terrified of the idea of all of my stuff being in a cloud-based system. I like to have control where it is and have a cloud base as a backup on things. The way that Lightroom synchronizes things is a little bit messy, in the sense that it's great that it has that syncing ability, but it doesn't play in nicely with the way that I do things locally. So I like to have libraries stored upon years, like annual libraries for my Lightroom locally. And then I'll synchronize that to Lightroom CC, which means that when it comes to the end of the year, I have to wipe everything from my online sort of sync and then resynchronize again the local one. It's more efficient and better use of processing power to have smaller libraries locally. So yeah, I kind of have to use that setup for annual local file storage, which means that my Lightroom CC has to also match that if it's going to sync with it to be able to do it on the iPad. Lightroom CC, if I was doing it on desktop and iPad, is great. It's fully functional in the editing terms, but again, the file management, it's really lacking some of those features still on import and stuff. So I don't know if I'm still waiting for, something like that to come about with Lightroom, some big jump in improvement. It feels like it's been stuck sort of where it is for the last couple of years or so. So maybe this year there might be some improvements happening there. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see about that. Just gonna scroll up through because there's been quite a few chats happening. Yeah. So WWDC on my birthday. That is correct. June 7th. And then there'll be a whole collection of events and stuff. I always tell myself, you know what, I'm gonna join in with some of the developer stuff and maybe learn Swift or get involved with some of the design things because it looks pretty, you know, attainable. It's just having the time to do it, isn't it? What else have we got people chatting about? Oh my god, this chat is moving faster than I expected. Bear with me a moment. I'm also using a teleprompter, so if it looks like I'm looking weirdly into the screen, it's because I've got the chat on the screen. Oh yeah, this was another thing. So VESA mount iMacs. At the moment, to get your iMac mounted on the 27-inch model, you have to buy it as a custom order with the VESA mount on it, rather than the old style, which is where you take off the foot and then you could mount it. So I've got my display here mounted, and I'd like to be able to use the same mount and then utilize this display in some other format, or maybe pass it to Ellie to use, or maybe have a dual display somehow. That's two very big displays to work with. I'm not sure I saw that in the, let's have a look on the site if it mentions anything. Let's see, does it say anything about VESA options? Let's have a look. No, I'm not 100% sure. Doesn't look like, yeah, it doesn't look like there's any sort of area around here to be able to mount anything in, but maybe you could, maybe there's a pin thing that pops off and then you get that attachment again that fits in. I just hope it's an aftermarket. But then look at the balance of that. Surely you wouldn't VESA mount from there because it's not a central point. Maybe there is a VESA mount option. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I would love to wall mount if possible, because you can set your height and everything nice and comfortably. Let me just run through. People say scared of buying the I'm assuming this is the iPad Pro in case it bends. I think you'd have to put a lot of work in to bend one. Yeah, definitely. I bent my iPhone 6 ever so slightly right at the end of its life, but that was, I think, Apple's thinnest iPhone. Since then, I'm so glad that they've gone back to thicker designs. I love the thicker designs so much more. Personally, I don't really care for things being thinner and lighter all too much, especially when it comes at a cost of performance and sort of processing power. So making it thicker is, you know, if it comes with the trade-off of having better battery life, give me thicker all the time, all the time. Going here for the MacBook, going for the iPad instead of the MacBook. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know your thoughts on that if you're using iPads as a main sort of machine and how you get by with it. One of my favorite channels for iPad related content is Byte Review. I know there's yeah, just numerous videos to go and check out, and you'll see all sorts of videos and desk setups and whatever. It's a powerful machine, but it depends. The limitation can either be yourself or it could be the software. Oh, this is cool. Using LiDAR for real estate work. Yeah, I imagine it works really well on going around houses and measuring things out and you know, getting true measurements of whatever and visualizing. Especially during pandemic, that's probably incredibly useful for building sort of like virtual rooms and everything else. Just the channel again is Byte Review, BYTE review. I'm just going to add that into the chat. Yeah, great channel. Lots of good iPad related content, and a viewer on this channel as well. So hey, if you're watching. Yeah, so oh, I'm still a little bit thrown off by the copyright thing and the tech that we or the tech issues that we ran into earlier. But I think I've explained all of the things that I'm mostly thinking about these reviews, and it's been cool to hang out with you. Yeah, I want to do more streams like this at some point, but I think I might have to rethink the way that I use extra content and copyright, whatever. If this was an actual published video, I think it would benefit from the sort of slower pace of review and processing, because you can quite easily claim you know, fair play on things. But when you're doing it live, I think the YouTube algorithms will work a little bit more conservatively and shut things down. So maybe this isn't the right approach, but it's been a fun experiment. In terms of other live streams, so with the Art and the Heart live streams, I've got a few people lined up for future streams, and I've struggled a little bit with getting people on the same sort of time availability as myself. We've either clashed on things or it's just not worked. And so it's become a little bit pressuring to try and do it weekly. So the idea is that I'm now going to switch them to monthly. And hopefully that means that we can put a little bit more time into having a monthly sort of chat on creativity and focusing on guests on a monthly basis, and free up some time. And yeah, otherwise I'm enjoying heading back out with the camera a lot more lately. I'm going to be heading out again and making some more vlogs very, very soon. Thanks for all the love on the latest video that I published yesterday. That's been great to see, and I always appreciate your support on everything. So yeah, it's always very much appreciated with things. But yeah, for today, I think I'm going to end this here, and I just want to thank you guys for joining again, and we will yeah, we'll hang out again sometime soon, and hopefully I won't get flustered with all the technical difficulties and whatever. Yeah, I'm a little bit thrown off by things. Oh, hold on. I've just had a message. Ellie said comments. Ellie, do you wanna pop in here? I can't see the comments quick enough. Hopefully she's heard that. She might see that and come in. Oh, this is an interesting topic actually. So be seeing the iPhone with the mini LED. Yeah, definitely hoping for that. I think that would be something that that will come about. And also the ProMotion 120 hertz display, which I believe is still on the iPad Pro. I didn't see it mentioned, but hoping that will make its way to the iPhone at some point. Definitely. All right. I'm gonna head off before this gets awkward and weird. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. This has been a fun experiment, and we'll catch you in a later one real soon. All right. See you later, everyone. Bye bye.